Welcome to Hello Darling. Today, my very special guest is a young woman. Her name is Sarah, and she is survivor and victor of incredible life journey, including domestic violence, drug abuse. She's now a happy mother of 3 and is actually here to share her journey to give everyone hope that you can change your life when you're ready for it. Hello, darling. Welcome to the show.
Hello, darling.
Sarah, where did your journey of abuse begin?
I think originally my journey began in 2010. It was my birthday, and yearly I would go to Bali on a holiday. I'd been about 3 times before for my birthday, so it wasn't something out of the ordinary. But this year I went with friends and acquaintances, people that I didn't know. We landed in Bali and we were greeted by this guy who was a friend of a friend, and at the time we didn't know that he had ties to street gangs over there. So the first thing they said to us was, "Welcome to Bali, you couldn't be in safer hands, let's go have fun," basically. The first night that we were there, we went back to our room, we got dressed, we went out. Everybody's drink was spiked, and I was raped by the leader of a Balinese gang, the guy who picked us up from the airport. I was familiar with him, I thought I was, well, from the short time that I'd known him. And that was the first time that I ever felt weak and victimised and beaten down, really. Before that, I was happy, courageous. There was no way anybody would talk down to me, let alone do that to me, because I was strong.
Take me through the morning after, I assume morning after the rape. What went through your mind? What did you or didn't do?
Like straight away?
Yes.
I actually came to, and he was still on top of me. So I became conscious while it was happening. So it was quite confronting. And I remember looking around, and I was in a dingy motel room, whatever it was. And I started having flashbacks of the night. I remember being unconscious on a scooter, but the rain was pouring down on me, not having any consciousness to know what I was doing, but almost aware of my surroundings enough. So I kind of remember getting there, but I don't remember all of it until I came to. And I remember looking at him and looking around, and he was like in shock that I was in shock. And he started telling me that he wanted me to meet his family, and that he was going to take me out into the rainforest to meet them, and that he loved me. Basically convinced me that it was me, that I had given him the impression that it was okay, which is insane considering I was unconscious. But yeah, so it was quite an internal battle straight away, just trying to figure out what actually happened, and just convincing myself that it wasn't me, but I did have to deal with it. So I agreed with whatever he said and asked him to take me back to my hotel room so that I could get changed. I told the girl that I was staying with the second I got in, and she was mad. She was really mad because she'd obviously met him too. And I just said, I don't want to leave the room. I don't want to go out there today. And she just said, okay, we'll stay in. So we stayed in and just talked about it and came up with a plan. And I looked at flights, and then I thought about my baby at home and looking at him and how hard it would be, because I was so confused about what had happened that I couldn't really face him. And it was the first night that I was there on a 10-day trip or 7-day trip, I'm not sure. So I decided to stay with her, and she shepherded me, and we stayed in most of the time. We didn't leave the room except for to eat or something. And everyone else went out and partied. But once we talked to everyone else, they told us that they woke up naked in the street. They woke up beaten up. They'd been robbed. They'd had all this stuff happen to them, and it wasn't just me that was not attacked, but victimised.
Did you report it to the police?
No.
Why not?
He was the leader of a street gang.
Did you
And
ever
I was
see
in
him
Bali.
again? Did you ever see him again?
He did a couple of days later. I walked out the front and he was there with other people, and I looked at my friend and she turned around with me and we walked back into the room. So yeah, I did see him once, but I'll never forget his face or his name.
So how did it affect your life going forward? You were then 22. Yes? This is now. You are how old?
34.
34. Tell me your journey in between, in bold points. What happened? How did it influence your further journey?
I went home and talked about it to my mum. She took me, obviously you have to deal with things like pregnancy, STDs, you know, that kind of journey, going to the doctor telling them that you've been raped in Bali by a Balinese person. It's not something that you really want to face and talk about, but the chances of STDs and pregnancies obviously could be high. Luckily, I didn't have anything like that. I was really lucky. But I started to drown it out with substance abuse, which was meth. So I had friends that did it. They offered it to me and it made me feel numb, and I didn't have to deal with the way that I was feeling. So I kept doing it.
Mm-hmm. For how long?
I think it would have been about 2010. Yeah, it would have been about 6 years that I was an addict.
And then the next relationship that you went to?
Well, it started spiraling after that. It was like the first relationship I had after that was toxic, but it was like manipulation. So I had like this manipulating partner, and he was also a substance abuser. And then the next one was manipulating and verbally abusive. And then the next one was manipulating, verbally abusive, physically abusive. And then the next one was manipulating, verbally abusive, physically abusive, financially abusive, and it just rolled on and rolled on and rolled on, and every guy after that got worse and worse and worse.
Why do you think you attracted always the same kind of a man?
I didn't feel like I deserved better. I was a substance abuser, they were a substance abuser, and that kind of behaviour is just common with substance abuse.
And now, looking at Sarah now, yes, you have a profession, you are a makeup artist, you married, you're mother of 3 children. How did you turn it around, and what happened in between?
Well, it got worse before it got better. So I've been driven out into the bush and been made to dig my own grave. I've been tied up, raped and tortured.
By whom?
By partners. One of those things happened to me by my husband now. He was a heroin addict, I was a meth addict, and we just lived a toxic, abusive life. When we first met, he was amazing. He was so sweet. He didn't take drugs. He was a recovering addict, and he'd spent a lot of time in jail. But I met this side of him, the clean side, the side that I have now. And then he fell into old patterns, and we both fell into old patterns. And then I fell pregnant. It got so bad, the abuse was so severe that I'd hit rock bottom. There was nothing left, and I was considering taking my own life. I genuinely thought that there was no other way out of it than to take my own life.
What kept you going?
Someone said to me a quote that stuck with me forever, and it was, rock bottom is the most solid foundation that you can rebuild your life on.
And you believe that was the case?
I held on to that with all my heart and all my strength and decided that that's what I was going to do. I'd been a victim for so long that I decided it was time to be a warrior.
What did you do to turn it around?
In a 2-bedroom house with a mattress on the floor, we literally went back to nothing. We had nothing except for ourselves. And we slept on a single mattress on the floor together in a couch and decided that having each other was better than having everything else. I rehabilitated myself. So I just detoxed, stayed away, and I remember actually walking with my daughter through the town, and there was roses all along one of the fences. And I remember saying to myself, Sarah, stop and smell the roses. It's the first time in a long time I'd done anything like that. Life was so busy, it was full of drugs and abuse and just horrible stuff. And I got my daughter out of her pram and I was like, come on, let's smell the roses. And we smelled the roses and they were so sweet. And it was such a, probably, I'm gonna cry, emotional but freeing feeling, you know, not running for my life, not being so busy or caught up in absolute crap, just stopping, spending that time with my daughter and smelling the roses.
Beautiful. Your children that have been part of the journey, how old are they now and how do they cope with the memories or knowledge of what happened to you and them as a family?
My son's 15. He has been more subject to any of it than any others because my daughter's 9, she was only 3 when we turned our lives around. But my 15-year-old boy, he brings it up and we talk about it. You know, things that I did when I was on drugs that hurt him. And I just have to listen and apologise and remind him that I love him and also help him relate to my journey so that he doesn't make the same mistakes I made. I remind him how hard it is to fight for your life and how much love and energy it takes, and that I loved him so much that I changed for him. And he's beautiful. He's such a good kid. He's honestly beautiful. It's definitely had such a good impact on his life to see his mum turn his life around, because a lot of his friends have parents who are addicts or were addicts, and he can share his journey with them and give them hope that their parents can change too.
Tell me through the process of helping your husband to change, who was, as you said, heroin addict, violent, abusive. How do you make it happen for him that he wanted to make a change? Because as we know, it's not you who changed him. You changed him, so he wanted to have the change.
I think a lot of men don't know any different. My husband came from a home where his mum was a single mother for a long time. She worked really hard and he was, from what I've been told, left to his own devices. So he would ride his bike around and meet people on the street, basically. Even though he didn't live on the street, he wasn't raised like that. He had a great mother, she just worked really hard. He kind of raised himself on the street. So the people that you meet when you're out on the street is not the kind of people who are busy at work or at school. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So he started making the wrong choices. He was hanging around the wrong people, making the wrong choices. He was institutionalised. He was in and out of prison for 10 years, maybe more. Before me, he didn't know that he could have a life like he had with me. When he first met me, it was like he was fresh out of jail. I think he'd done 6 or 7 years at once. It was like a whole new world for him. And even though he had hope, he still didn't really know what kind of a life that would be. He didn't know how to treat a woman. He didn't know how to treat children. He knew how to work hard. He's always been a very hard worker, but that's all he knew, just work hard. So before me, he didn't know what it was like to have a wife or children, even a girlfriend. He'd never had a girlfriend before me. I was the first girl that he took home to meet his mum. So that's huge. But yeah, I think it was just showing him that he could have a different life. When our lives took a turn and we started using drugs, it was never really something I wanted. I always wanted to get out of it. I just didn't know how. I kept going in and out of that life until the last time. And showing him that we could have another life was even harder. I had to rehabilitate myself first. So I moved myself away with the kids, rehabilitated myself, which took about 2 months, and I'd pressed charges and put a restraining order on him. I was pregnant with his child, and I thought to myself, do you really want to raise another child without a dad or in the prison system? And I called him and I said, do you want to be a part of this baby's life or do you want to be in prison? And he said, I want to be a part of the baby's life. And I said to him, I gave him an ultimatum, rehab or jail? And he chose rehab. So I went and picked him up. I took him back to our home that I'd made with the kids and nursed him through detoxing from heroin and meth, which was quite a traumatic experience for the kids, because when you're coming off substances like that, you shake, you rock, you sweat. He'd gone from a healthy man to full of wrinkles, gaunt in the face. There was nothing left of him. He was wasting away. He'd hit rock bottom too. He tried to get into rehab and they rejected him. It was Australia's strictest rehab. They said he was too cocky and too proud and that he wouldn't change. He'd be a liability for the other boys in the program.
Do you think this kind of a criteria was right in this case?
I think it gave him enough of a kick up the bottom to fight harder. I said to him, tomorrow you're going to go back there with a sleeping bag and you're going to sleep on his doorstep until he takes you in. It's rehab or jail. There's no coming back. I'm not taking this. I'm not putting my kids through this. It's up to you. If you want this, it's your turn to fight for this.
How tough was it to be so tough?
So hard, especially when they're detoxing, because the empathy and love that you have for them is just overwhelming and you just want to fix them and help them, but this isn't something that you can do. It's something they have to do.
How was your own rehab journey and your own detoxing journey when you went off drugs?
I just channeled in on my kids. So, like I said, we stopped and smelled the roses that day. That was me detoxing. That's how I spent my days, walking my kids to school, playing at the park, that sort of stuff. And I kept telling myself, I'm not going to be a victim anymore, I'm going to be a warrior. I played lots and lots and lots of songs. I do have my one song that was like my drive, which I just listened to over and over and over and over again. And yeah, that's what I did. I just channeled in on the kids. And
did you cry a lot?
A lot. I was pregnant at the time too, so it was really hard.
What would be your message to everyone who is watching us today? And a lot of people would believe, as I said before, in certain stage you can't change anybody, change yourself. What is your message of hope, advice, encouragement for others that are going through challenges, maybe not even as extreme as yours, but the life that they wouldn't like to live?
You're never too old to turn your life around. You're never too low to rise above, and rock bottom is the best foundation to build your life on.
I understand. And do you think that the fact that you are a mother, the children gave you another drive, obviously, to survive?
Definitely. They definitely kick in that survival mode. When you're in that sort of situation, you do go into fight mode or flight mode. So you either switch off or you fight. And I think most people switch off, and that's why they use drugs to switch off. But it's training your mind and reminding yourself that you've got to fight, because switching off doesn't help. Fighting does. And I don't mean putting on boxing gloves and physically fighting, but I mean reminding yourself, getting up, looking in the mirror every day and saying, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this, because you can.
And have gone through so many abusive relationships, what would you say are most common warning signs that your partner will be violent, that your partner is out of balance, that your partner is a drug user before you officially know?
There's usually red flags.
That's right. I want you to name few for those that maybe don't know how to see it or cannot see it.
Manipulation, like when you think that you're onto something, or when you think that there's something wrong, there's generally something wrong. Like, if you
Your
think
gut
there's
feeling.
something wrong, yeah, follow your gut, not your heart. Sometimes your heart will lead you in the completely wrong direction, but your gut will always take you where you need to go.
Manipulation being coercive control.
Absolutely. I remember one of the signs when I was with one of my ex-partners. We'd been together for 3 months, and he'd go out while I was asleep and the house would be completely locked and there was no keys left in the house. So I'd be locked in the house and he'd say, "Oh, sorry, I didn't realise I took the keys with me." But he'd locked me in the house so that I couldn't leave until he got back.
Yeah.
And it took me so long to realise what he was doing. And it was weeks and weeks that he would do that while I was asleep. He would just go out and lock the house and I would be stuck in there.
Sarah, if I was to give you now, and thank you so much for sharing this incredible journey. You are a young woman that had so many lives. Congratulations on your strengths and on the fact that you're now trying to help others by sharing your journey and showing they also can take it around. Thank you for supporting Kiss Violence Against Women Goodbye. And before you walk with this T-shirt of the message around, if I was to give you now a magic wand, as you know, I do it for my guests, and you have 2 wishes, one for the world and one for yourself, what would be your first wish for the world?
I would wish that every woman out there would know the courage and strength that she has inside of her, because we are way stronger and braver than we know, and it takes us far too long to know the courage and strength that we have.
And for yourself?
I would probably give myself the same, the courage and the strength every day to remember every time I look in the mirror that I do have the strength and that I can continue to be everything that I want for myself and my family.
Sarah, thank you so much. Thank you, and I wish you all of luck and strengths that you have. And thank you for sharing your journey and being my guest.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And let's kiss Violence Against Women goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you.